Welcome back, everyone. My name is Neha Khanna, and I am eagerly looking forward to our next session, which is about how to make our lives into our dharma practice. And it's an absolute honor and privilege for me to welcome Jetsunma Tenzin Palmo, one of the most venerable Tibetan spiritual teachers. Now, she was conferred the title of Jetsunma by His Holiness, the 12th Gyalwang Drukpa, head of the Drukpa Kyrgyz lineage, in recognition of her spiritual achievements as a nun and for her efforts in promoting the status of female practitioners in Tibetan Buddhism. She established the Dongyu Gatsa Ling Nunnery in 2002 in Himachal Pradesh in India, on recognizing the plight of women and the lack of facilities for them to pursue a spiritual path. Raised in London, she became a Buddhist in her teens and decided to come to India in 1964 to pursue her spiritual path. She spent 12 years in a cave. Can you believe it? 12 long years in a cave, and was one of the first Westerners to be ordained as a Tibetan Buddhist nun. She was also taught extensively throughout the world. My honor and privilege to welcome Jetsunma.
Thank you, my dear. Thank you, Neha. So nice to meet you, albeit online.
I certainly hope that the world around us changes for the better soon enough so we can actually do this offline, all of us. Jetsunma, an absolute pleasure and honor for all of us to have you with us today. And I know that a lot of people are excitedly and eagerly looking forward to what you have to say, because let's face it, that even in the best of times, life is challenging for most of us. And I think we can all agree that in the last year and a half, we've all been through a lot, some much worse than the others, whether it is suffering on account of your own poor health or that of a loved one, or losing someone you immensely love and depend on. I mean, these are some of the most traumatic experiences anyone can ever undergo. And unfortunately, we've seen too much of that, too much loss, pain, suffering, and grieving around the world, including here in India, in the last year and a half. So I'm pretty sure that over the next 45 minutes, we are going to focus on how to really cope with that pain. But I want to start out, Jetsunma, by asking you this specific question. Now, most of us have grown up thinking that, there is life that we're living every day, and then there is going to be a day that'll arrive when we will retire, hang up our boots, finally take that much needed break and go seeking the rainbow. And usually it's just very difficult to find that day. For most of us, it never really comes because we're so caught up in the daily rigmarole of life. So how and where do we make a start?
Well, I mean, I think the point is that we are, in a way, making that divide between what we regard as being spiritual, the times when we go to the temple or the church, or where we sit on our meditation cushion and try to focus on our mind, or we pray, or we do things, we meet great masters, we go on pilgrimage. This is all very, very spiritual. And then, the rest of the day, the rest of our life is dealing with the family, dealing with relationships, cooking, cleaning, if you're a woman, going to work, dealing with your professional life, dealing with your boss, dealing with your colleagues, dealing with the world in general. That is just ordinary, secular, mundane activity, which we are hoping we are going to one day drop so that we can become spiritual. And so I think it's really very important to recognize that whether we're in a temple or a cave, or whether we're in the midst of the household or the bazaar, we take our mind with us. Our mind is with us wherever we go, where even we travel all around the world, but we take ourselves with us. And so the important thing, therefore, is to recognize that what needs to change is not so much the external circumstances as our internal response to those circumstances. In other words, what we need is to change our own mind. And for that, everything can be useful. I mean, I really do feel this is very important to recognize that so many inner qualities that we need to develop, including just simply kindness, generosity, patience, thinking of others beyond ourselves, and so forth. All these qualities, we need other people to help us to develop. Because we can sit on our meditation cushion and think, may all beings be well and happy, may all beings be free from suffering. But then you have to go outside and deal with those beings. And not all beings are friendly and helpful. And some are, some aren't. And how are we going to deal with those people? How are we going to respond to those people skillfully? Is how we inwardly change and develop. So those very difficult people themselves are, on one level, our greatest spiritual friends, because they are teaching us many qualities which we would never develop if we were only by ourselves or in company with all the people we like. Do you understand? So, I mean, these, we need so many inner qualities to develop, and it's other people, other circumstances, especially the difficult ones, which are going to help us to develop these qualities. I mean, sometimes I say it's like going to a gymnasium. You go to a gymnasium and you're on the machines working away, sweat pouring down, all your muscles protesting. You're paying for it.
Yes.
Because why? Because we know that this is going to make our muscles strong, and at the end of it, we're going to feel ever so much better, and we're going to be so much healthier. And so all these difficulties which we have to face in our life, painful as they are, and not that we're trying to go and find them, I mean, we stay, they'll come. All these difficulties and challenges are the way to make us inwardly, spiritually strong. Not that we are all smiles and sweetness when everything goes right and fall apart when things go wrong. This makes us have that equanimity to deal with all situations, not just the good ones, but especially those which are very, very difficult. So this is what I mean by putting the Dharma, putting our spiritual beliefs and concerns right at the center of our lives, not just, in those times when we've got a bit of extra time or, we're being especially good and spiritual. All the time, whatever we meet, that is our opportunity to become more present, more mindful, more clear, and more skillful in our responses. So this is the point. I mean, it's, then the whole day becomes your practice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In this moment, how can I respond to this skillfully? How can I develop more kindness, more patience? Doesn't mean we have to be stupid. I mean, if someone's trying to cheat us, it's not good for them also, just to let them get away with it. But we can deal with the situation in a way which doesn't end up with everybody screaming and fighting at each other or everybody upset. I mean, one can be firm, but at the same time skillful. So it's not that we're naive and just, allowing everything to happen, but we can deal with it in a way which doesn't create more problems, more difficulties on both sides.
Right. Jetsunma, if I could come in here, you have very beautifully touched upon what is at the heart of what we're discussing today. There are days where, like any other human being, I'm having a difficult time because of something that may have gone wrong either in my professional life or my personal life. And I wonder if I can just run far, far away from it all. There are days when I want to run away to the Himalayas. But you put it so beautifully when you said wherever you go, your mind goes with you. So the reality that we have to confront is that whatever circumstances and challenges we are confronted with, we have to deal with it. There is no running away from it. There is no escaping it. Our mind will go with us wherever we go. The question then that I want to ask you, Jetsunma, as somebody who often struggles with these issues herself, whether it's anxiety or self-doubt, or worries about uncertainty over the future, how do you control the mind in that moment when you know that you're in pain, where you're suffering, where maybe you're feeling anger, rage because somebody has wronged you? How do you tame your mind in that situation? What are the specific things one needs to do or can do in that situation to calm one's mind?
Well, of course, obviously, if you have some kind of regular sitting practice, some kind of meditation which you are accustomed to, then that immediately becomes a refuge at that moment. You can go back into that state for the moment. And it helps us to develop the ability to cope with difficult situations. But for example, somebody does something that you really don't like and you're very upset and you're very angry. So then, honestly, the first thing is to accept that you're angry. Not try to pretend you're not angry. I mean, right now, anger is there, right? So first of all is to recognize it, right? This is the anger. Then to accept, right now, I'm feeling really angry. And then to step back, and this is why a formal meditation helps, because you know how to step back. Step back and just look at that anger without judgment. Where is it in the body? What does it feel like? How is it? And then, if possible, to welcome it with friendliness, with giving it loving kindness. I'm so sorry you're feeling angry right now. May you be well and happy. If you can't manage that, I mean, the very, very best is to look into the nature of the anger. And we see that anger is like a thick black cloud, the big thunder cloud. But behind it all is the clear blue sky. That's very best. However, if we can't manage that and we can't deal with our anger in that moment and it's about to spill over, then I would say what is very helpful is what Shantideva says in the Bodhicharyavatara: just be like a block of wood. In other words, just don't react in that moment. Don't say anything, don't do anything, just be like a big log of wood. Just sit there. And then gradually, because at least if it doesn't help the situation, it doesn't make it worse. You don't end up saying things you shouldn't have said. And then afterwards, oh God, what did I do? What did I say? You haven't said anything. You're just. And then later, when we calm down a bit, then we can try using these other methods. For example, if we habitually get very upset and angry with things, to really look at that anger with friendly eyes, not with more anger or beating ourselves up or blaming somebody else, but just, why do we get angry in these circumstances? asking ourselves in a friendly way. There's a story of this yogi, maybe it was Milarepa, and one day he comes back to his cave, and there are these 5 big, ugly demons sitting there. And so he starts to say very fierce mantras to dispel them. And they just sit there laughing at him. And so then he sits and meditates on their essential empty nature. And then when he opens his eyes, they're all just at him. So then he says, okay, you are my guests. You are welcome. Just sit there. I will make some tea, and then we'll all sit around and have a nice cup of tea. How about that? So then he turns around and he starts making a fire, getting the water, boiling it up to make the tea. And then when he turns around, all those fierce deities have transformed into beautiful local deities. And they say to him, we will be your followers and we will protect the Dharma. And so then they become Dharma protectors because he accepted them. He was friendly towards them instead of always trying to suppress them or get rid of them or reject them. Those negative feelings in our heart, we should embrace them and ask them what's their problem, and why do you feel like this? And, give them some compassion. And that gradually begins to really dissolve that hard center of, anger or jealousy or fear or whatever we have, by opening up to it instead of rejecting it. But in the meantime, stay like a log of wood.
I'm going to remember that, Jetsunma. These words are already etched in my mind. Next time I'm about to lose my temper, I am going to remind myself of these 3 magic words, log of wood. And I have to say that the story that you shared with us is just so powerful and the message in it so profound. All our lives we've been taught how to fight and conquer our demons. You're telling us today, it's all right. You don't need to fight them. Look them in the eye, but accept them. I think that's beautiful.
Accept them with, it doesn't mean that you give way. But what you do is you begin to understand them and give them sympathy. Like if you're dealing with some child who is very, very out of control, you don't beat the child up. You don't lock them away. It's much better just to embrace them and say, what's your problem? Why are you acting like this? Tell me about it. And, slowly, something inside which is very hard begins to dissolve. Love conquers all, they always say. Well, it also conquers the negative as well as the positive.
Yeah. I think that's very beautifully put. Love does conquer all. And I think it's about time we began looking at our demons differently. And let's face it, we all have our individual demons. But, since we're talking about that much needed spiritual journey that each one of us needs to go on, Jetsunma, the problem is that we're so preoccupied with multiple goals that we've set ourselves in life. We're all busy trying to find that dream job, trying to find that dream partner, building that dream house, and having that ultimate, seemingly perfect dream life. How do you reconcile all these endeavors that we're constantly so preoccupied with the spiritual aspirations that an individual may have? And I think I can say that for myself. I don't see myself living in a cave ever the way you have. I think I would want all the material goods in the world, goodies in the world. And yet, I think I do seek some sort of spirituality. I'm not yet sure what it is, what shape form it'll take in my life, but I know I want to go on that journey. How do I reconcile these two?
Well, you know, my dear, the problem is not out there. The problem is not our possessions. The problem is not, you know, what we own or don't own. The problem is our grasping, our attachment to that. So I'll tell you another story, okay? You probably know this story, but it illustrates the point, right? So in ancient India, there was this king, and he was a very wealthy king, and he had a big palace filled with all sorts of beautiful things which kings have, and it was very luxurious, very comfortable. But he was a devout king, and he had a guru, and his guru was a sadhu who only had a little loincloth and a wooden bowl for his arms round. And so they're sitting in the garden, and the guru is teaching the king, when the servants come running up and saying, "Oh, your majesty, Maharaj, quickly, quickly, the whole palace is on fire. Quickly come." And the king says, "Don't bother me, you deal with that. I am learning Dharma from my guru. You go and deal with the fire." And then the guru shouts up and says, "What do you mean? I have my bowl in the palace." And that's the point, right? It's not what you own, it's whether what you own owns you.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
So you have everything in the world, and if you lose it tomorrow, oh well, everything is impermanent. Or you can be living very ascetically, but if you're attached to what you have, then that's attachment. And attachment is what brings the suffering, not the things themselves. The things themselves are innocent. They're neither good nor bad, they're just. It's our inner attitude to what we have that's the problem. So if we want to be happy, genuine happiness, not just pleasure happiness, which is very impermanent, but genuine happiness comes from an appreciation of everything, not just, you know, things we own, but the sky, the air, the flowers, the trees, the birds, the fact that we can see, that we can hear, that we can move. How wonderful. And that sense of appreciation, along with the sense of enjoying things but not being attached to them, brings an inner joy. And that inner joy is very different from just the outer, you know, happiness, which depends on things being comfortable and pleasant. And you can have things which are comfortable and pleasant. That's not the problem. The problem is our attitude. This is back again, everything depends on our mind.
Certainly. And, you know, you talked about attachment there. I must say, perhaps one of the biggest goals that I have set myself is to be able to achieve even some degree of detachment in life. And if I'm able to ever do that in this lifetime, I think I would consider myself to be very lucky, because for us ordinary mortals, perhaps that's one of the toughest things to achieve, detachment. And I think that really, you would probably agree, is what holds the key to resolving a lot of the issues that we face in life. But tell me this, Jetsunma, even the Buddha had to give up everything to find the ultimate truth. Can we ordinary mortals ever come even close to the truth while being so involved in the daily rigmarole of our mundane lives?
No, because I mean, the Buddha himself, he met with kings and princes and wealthy businessmen and all sorts of kinds of people. And he didn't tell them all to give everything up. Mm-hmm. He just told them how to, you know, regard everything as being impermanent and not to cling to it. You can enjoy it, but don't cling to it. The clinging is the problem. It's this grasping mind, which is the problem. And so, many of them gained great spiritual realizations. It's not that they all went off, and became bhikkhus. I mean, some of them did and some of them didn't. Mm-hmm. And it's, as I say, it's not the things which we possess and the the kind of lifestyle we are leading so much as our inner poise, our inner sense of presence. I mean, what we need is to develop this quality of being aware, of knowing what's going on in the mind while it's going on, to know what we're doing instead of being swept along by the mind, to be able to witness the mind. That is nothing to do with your where you're living, but it's all to do with what's happening inside yourself.
It's all.
So you have to do it yourself. Nobody can do it for you. This is the question. Yeah. That actually all of us are responsible for our own journey.
That is very true. No one else can do it for us. We have to do it for ourselves. We really have to find it within ourselves. That's where the challenge lies, but that's where all the answers are. I want to ask you this. Anyone who's listening to you right now, I'm pretty sure Jetsunma wants to know more about your incredible journey, your personal experiences. Being someone who spent 12 long years in a cave. Today, if we asked you, what is harder, you think, living in this world with everything that life throws at you every single day, or being on your own and living in such extreme, challenging conditions and facing all sorts of threat from extreme weather, wild animals, and staying without basic amenities and comforts of life? Which do you think is tougher?
Well, I think it depends on who you are. For example, when a group of our nuns went to visit the cave in Lahul, and someone said to them, well, would you like to stay here overnight? I mean, they were horrified, especially because they thought there might be ghosts. So for them, it would be a big suffering, right? For myself personally, it was not suffering. And then on the other hand, some people develop so much more kindness and sensitivity and generosity because of being with others, and especially trying to help others and being in the midst of a big social environment. For them is very fulfilling. For other people, it might be very unfulfilling. I mean, I personally would hate it, but that's me. Different people are different. So, and also at different times of your life, you need different things. So there are times when it's good to be alone or in a kind of group meditation situation. And it's other times it's good to be out in society and dealing with the various people and the various circumstances we come across. So it's not this or that, but both and.
Absolutely, which is why we're all different from each other. God has made us all different, and that's what we need to recognize, right? There are certain things that may work for you, but not for me, and vice versa. But I have to ask you, since you believe that you were cut out for this life, what was the most vital lesson that life taught you while you were in the cave for those 12 years?
Oh, I don't know. Probably how to grow turnips and potatoes. That was really very useful. I never grown a turnip in my life until I went and lived in the cave.
Wow. All right. So you perhaps acquired culinary skills of a very different kind that most of us aren't familiar with. But let me ask you this. There are times when we understand these concepts that we're talking about today and they resonate with us. And then there are moments when we lose track after, let's say, following these lessons for a few days, because let's face it, we're human and we tend to have short memories and our emotions get the better of us in no time. How do we ensure that we are able to continue disciplining the mind on an ongoing basis, even as we try and live our lives more freely?
Well, again, I think it is very helpful to have a daily morning practice, even if it's only 10 minutes, to set our motivation for the day, right? To think, well, now I'm going to use this day for the benefit of myself and for the benefit of all those beings whom I should meet. Not just, people that you're trying to impress, or people that it's important to impress, but every single, honestly, to just remember that just as you wish to feel well and happy and okay, and you don't want problems and difficulties and suffering, every single being that you meet, including the street dogs, have the same feeling. They want to be happy. They want to be okay. They don't want to suffer. Every single person that you meet. If we're on a bus, if you're on a plane, if you're in a train, just look at all those people. Each one of them has problems. Each one of them has joys, just like we do. And so wish them well, wish them happy, wish them free from suffering. Just that, walking along the street, may all these beings be well and happy. The word for mindfulness in Sanskrit is sati, or smriti in Sanskrit, sati in Pali. And it means to remember. And so although it's translated as awareness or mindfulness in English, and in Tibetan it's the same, it has the idea of to remember. And so the main obstacle is that we forget.
Yeah.
Right? We forget to remember. To remember what? Where we are right now in this moment. We're swept off in the past or into the future or running around in the present, but we never actually just remain aware and present in this moment. And that poise, that inner poise, is very, very, very helpful. And, just to be within yourself, within your body, so that when difficulties come, we are not so overwhelmed because we are poised.
Absolutely. And, you've made some extremely important points there, Jetsunma. When you talk about mindfulness, kindness, it's so important for us to show kindness to each one of us, to each person around us, because as they say, you never know what battles someone may be fighting. So show kindness. But, when you talk about living in the moment, and I completely understand the point that you're making, that we've got to learn to live in the moment, something we human beings find very difficult for some reason. But then when you're dealing with difficult emotions like fear, anger, frustration, or sadness, how do you remind yourself of dharma in that moment when you're feeling low, when you're in the abyss? You may want to be in that moment, but maybe that moment is what is hurting you.
Well, I would say bring the attention back to the breath, because in that moment, actually what is happening is that we are breathing. And when we breathe, we cannot breathe in the past and we cannot breathe in the future. We only breathe now. So therefore, it's very skillful just to bring our attention back, breathing in, breathing out, and that sense of inner relaxation, not making it tight, but just actually what's happening in the moment. In the moment, here we are, breathing. And just to bring the mind, settle the mind on the breath can help a lot to bring us back into what is actually happening and not the wild goings on that our mental faculties are giving us. because actually, what is happening is just that we're breathing. So that can bring us back into the moment very skillfully. Mm-hmm. And it's also something that nobody knows you're doing it. I mean, you're just, you're standing there, you're sitting there, you're walking or whatever you're doing, and you're breathing, and we're knowing. That's it. It's a very skillful way to bring us back into ourselves and into the present moment. And it's so uncomplicated. It doesn't require any particular spiritual affiliations. Mm-hmm. The Buddha used the meditation on breath in order to become a Buddha. It's not just, it has many depths as we go on. But the point is that, everybody can do it. You just breathe and know you're breathing. That's it.
Well, you make it sound so easy. I wish I could just snap my fingers and snap out of a state where I'm not feeling good about life.
Well, also, as Shantideva said, if there's a solution to our problems, why worry? And if there is no solution, what's the point of worrying?
Yes.
And that's true, Yeah. I mean, honestly, the worries that we have this year are not usually the worries we had last year. Those worries have gone. The worries this week, there's going to be a whole nother set next week. So, again, don't cling.
Don't cling. You're absolutely right. And
just say to yourself, this too will pass, right? Impermanence. It's a flowing river.
Absolutely. And you're quite right there, in saying that, we have to learn to stop worrying so much all the time. It's something we human beings are so used to doing, even unconsciously or at a subliminal level. We may not even realize it, but we're obviously harming ourselves in the process. But Jetsunma, tell me this, as human beings by nature, we're all social, and yet in social situations, we face challenges. When 2 people, 4 people are together in the same space, they're prone to clashing. There can be a clash of egos. We may not agree with each other. We may not like each other very much. How do we learn to accept others a little more easily and overlook their flaws? I mean, it's just something that we're perennially faced with.
I think have a sense of humor.
Yeah.
I mean, it is all as a kind of comedy show, really, because really, it's so ridiculous. And the things that we get upset about are ultimately also, compared with the problems in this world, are usually very trivial.
Yeah.
And why are we taking it so seriously? So if we don't take it seriously and we just, lighten up and laugh more in a friendly way, not in a nasty way, but in a kind way, and just see the whole thing as just, a cosmic comedy, really, then things are not so, we don't take them so hard. It's not hard. It's just, they're clouds in the sky. Well, clouds come together and then they disappear again, What difference does it make? And worry and anxiety really is a bad habit. It becomes an addiction.
Yeah.
If people are not worried about this, they'll look around for something to worry about, and so this is also something that we should look at, and really try to deal with that, because it's just a very bad habit, mm-hmm. which doesn't help us at all to even come to a good solution.
Absolutely. Do we worry sometimes just for the sake of it? I think that is a question all of us need to ask ourselves.
It's our default that, we worry. If it's something, we've got to worry about it. Otherwise, we're irresponsible, which is nonsense. Most solve themselves if you leave them alone.
That is so well said, Jetsunma, because, when you said that sometimes we feel we're being irresponsible when we're not worrying about something. Mea culpa. I can plead guilty to that, because sometimes when I'm happy, I begin to worry that either that happiness is not going to last, or that there is something that I'm missing or not paying attention to. I almost feel guilty sometimes about feeling happy.
Yeah, isn't it strange how, I mean, samsara itself is difficult, but it's twice as difficult, 10 times as difficult, because of our mental attitude towards it. The Buddha said that there are two kinds of dukkha. One dukkha is physical dukkha, which we can't help because we have a physical body. But the second dukkha, on top of that, is our mental response to that suffering. That is our second dukkha, and that is optional. We don't have to be upset just because things are difficult. That's up to us, how we respond. That difficulties will come, but how we use those difficulties, whether we use them to help us on the path or not, depends on us, And sometimes difficulties are necessary for us. As I said, someone said difficulties, we're like rough pieces of wood. And if we're always smoothing ourselves with silk, that's very pleasant, but we don't get smooth. To get smooth, we need sandpaper. And so sometimes we don't need sandpaper forever, because then we will get raw. But sometimes sandpaper helps us to become smooth. And it's all the difficulties which we come across are all teaching us something if we want to learn.
Exactly. Adversity, as they say, is the best teacher. It's not always there to punish us. It's often there to teach us something important. And
exactly. What are we learning? This is the question to ask. What have I learned from this? How is this helping me?
Yeah.
That's the.
And I loved, what you said some time back, that life at times can just be a cosmic comedy. And therefore, we really need to take things less seriously, maybe take life itself less seriously, learn to laugh more, lighten up. I absolutely loved that piece of advice, because I think a lot of us have unfortunately forgotten how to laugh, how to just enjoy life, and have a good time. But
love ourselves in a friendly way. Not take ourselves so seriously.
Yeah.
But not in there's a kind of laughter which is cynical. Not that kind of laughter, but friendly, joyful laughter.
Exactly.
And especially looking at ourselves and all our hang-ups, oh dear, here we go again, and laugh.
Absolutely. No two ways about it. But, as we wrap up this discussion, Jetsunma, I have to ask you a couple of questions. One, we are still in the middle of a pandemic that has unfortunately wreaked havoc around the world, including here in India. And it's also stripped us of our sense of security. It's left us all feeling extremely vulnerable and wondering if there's any real security. Can you take anything or anyone for granted for even a moment? What would your advice be to anyone who is worried right now as a result of the pandemic? And also, all of us right now who are listening to you would love to know, as somebody who is a spiritual guide to so many people around the world, what has been the most challenging situation for you personally, and how did you cope with it?
Well, I mean, I think honestly and truthfully, we have to face facts. And one of the facts is that samsara is not secure.
Yeah.
And if we seek security in that which is inherently insecure, in the end, we're going to go crash. I mean, we just have to accept that the only real security is in insecurity, in not believing that we can make things go the way we want them to go, and they're going to stay that way, because everything is impermanent. Everything is changing moment to moment to moment. It's a river. It's not solid concrete. And so we have to accept that everything is changing moment to moment to moment. And this pandemic also will change. It's also impermanent. It might change for the better or the worse, but it's all changing. And we have to flow with that. I mean, there's nothing we can do about it to make it well. But what I would say is that it's at this time when the media and the governments and everyone is spreading so much paranoia, so much fear, we should not plug into that energy. We should plug into our innate basic goodness, which we all have, which is the fullness of love and compassion and wisdom. And visualize sending out that light and that love everywhere to all the beings all around the whole planet, and especially in our house, in our neighborhood, towards the people we meet. Send out joy, send out love, send out light. Don't put out more black psychic energy, because the world, we talk about, Delhi and whatever as being polluted, but the real pollution is the psychic pollution of all our fear and anger and the paranoia. That, if we could see it, would be thick black. And so we need to send some light into all of that and not get caught up in that. Plug into our goodness. Don't plug into the darkness.
Wow, those are words to live by. Plug into your goodness, do not plug into your darkness. And that's how you spread light around you. And of course, life sometimes can be as simple as we make it. And with all the profound lessons you've taught us today, I'm sure all of us can look at making our everyday life into a spiritual practice. On that note, Jetsunma, what an honor it has been for me personally and for all of us here to have you as Rejuvenate. Thank you so much for your time, for your insights, for sharing your wisdom and perspective with us. And I'm sure that all of us are going to leave this session more enriched human beings with a determination to live our lives better. Thank you so much. It's been an honor talking to you.
Thank you, Neha, for all your enthusiasm and for your questions, and just lovely to see you.
Absolutely lovely to see you, Jetsunma. Thank you so much. And I really hope that I can see you in person sooner rather than later. Thank you for this honor.
Bye, my dear.